What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another edition. This one, a special Super Bowl edition of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Roscoe, and again, what a fun one we have for you guys tonight is not only will we be talking the Super Bowl with special guest and very good friend of the podcast, Matt Miller, but we will also, of course, this is basically the Gulfstream Park podcast at this point, but of course, we'll be talking about the Gulfstream Park card as well. So welcome in, everybody. Hopefully you guys enjoy the show. As you see scrolling at the bottom of the screen right now, please go down below the video player, and if you enjoy this show, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We'd greatly appreciate it, because not only does it show us you guys are enjoying the content, but it will push these podcasts out into the YouTube algorithm to hopefully bring like-minded horse players and sports players like yourself to the HHH Racing Podcast. And of course, for that, we thank you. As you see scrolling above the screen right now, bettinandboozin@gmail.com. Please email me with any questions, comments, or concerns. And also, you will see our schedule scrolling right now. Every other Wednesday, we sporadically do them or Mondays, we sporadically do them every Mondays. Horsin Around, it's our recap show of the weekend. Tuesdays, if you missed last night's episode after you watch this show, go back and watch that one. Pacific Horseplayers covered the coast to coast late pick 5, or coast to coast pick 5, I should say, with Noah and Ryan. And today, of course, Bettin N Boozin every single Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And tomorrow, Picks and Ponies at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please tune into that tomorrow with Howard, Pete, and Paul. Guys, let's, of course, every single episode on the HHH Racing Podcast YouTube channel is also posted in audio form. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor are the 3 destinations you can find those. So please go rate, review, and subscribe over there. If you're at the gym, going to school, in the car, wherever you want to listen audio over video, then we strongly suggest you guys come over to YouTube, as we show everything through video. But Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor is where you can watch or listen to those audio podcasts. Bettin N Boozin Podcast on TikTok and Instagram. Please go follow us over there. And of course, the Power Picks, guys, for those of you that are racing averse, as a lot of, not averse, Jesus Christ, that are racing inclined, we have Power Picks every single week. You get 3 full tracks, price plays, spot plays, pick 5 grids, everything you need to be successful on any given Saturday. We here at the HHH Racing Podcast got you covered with the Power Picks. That is all done through patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. The link is also in the description below. Since February of 2021, that's 762 total picks. Since then, we have a $2.15 ROI, and anything over $2 is a positive, and the average horse player nationwide is only clipping at $1.60 ROI. So well over that. So if you're not subscribed, you're missing out for only $5 a weekend. Again, patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. And you can see previous editions of those Power Picks before you buy them, or if you just want to learn more about us, go over to HHHRacingPodcast.com. Guys, let's not waste any more time. We got 2 people in the background right now. Hopefully our co-host, our final co-host, will join us here shortly. And then, of course, like I said, special guest Matt Miller will be joining us later. From East Coast of New Jersey, Patrick Kunstler, and of course, good friend and host of Pacific Horseplayers, but basically becoming a co-host again on Bettin N Boozin. So even though he left us, he can't stay away. Pat, Noah, of course, is here. Guys, welcome in. What's going on?
How we doing?
Doing well.
Super Bowl, guys, can't be too down in the dumps this week. It's got even though it's supposed to snow every day this week up by me, I'm hoping to at least avoid a little bit of it by sitting inside and gambling. I don't know about you guys, but
you know what I'm excited for, guys? I'm excited for White Abario to score the first touchdown in the Super Bowl on Sunday.
What odds are you in right now, Pat?
I think plus 400. I think he's like 4-1 right now.
It's pretty good, yeah. Considering that he just ran in 2 races last week in between the Philly and Mare Turf and the Pegasus World Cup, you got pretty good odds on that coming back this weekend. But
I had to throw that one in there to start.
Absolutely, because those of you that missed, Pat accidentally, we gave him a chance to give picks for the Pegasus World Cup stuff, and he clipped White Abario in the Philly and Mare Turf. So we had to give him a little bit of crap for that one. But again,
a week
guys,
of crap.
And it probably won't end after a week. I'll tell you that much. But either way, guys, let's see who's in the chat, and then we will get right into the handicapping. Katie, of course, was here bright and early at 5:09 p.m. when we started the show at 7. So, Katie, thanks so much for joining the show. Mom, thanks so much for joining early. Greatly appreciated. Terry Frank, of course, is here. Terry Frank, I see your best bet in there, my friend. Trust me, I will get to that in a little bit. The boss is here, says, hope the Roscoe family as well. Hi to my mom. Ralph Conti is here, of course. He said, bet the under 49. So we got a lot of best bets. So keep them coming in, guys. If you guys don't know, you're here on YouTube or even on X, the bottom right-hand side of the screen is the chat box. Please feel free to put anything you want in there. We read, well, within reason, of course. We read every single time. So Horsey Dave just says, all my tweets bear a 25% tariff. He's from Canada. Hey, delayed, Horsey Dave, delayed. No, what's up, Horsey Dave? Thanks so much for being on the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. Mark Flanagan, who are my Pats playing in the Super Bowl this year? I don't know. They might be playing the Bears, Mark. We'll got to see come Sunday. But trust me, I get it, Mark, completely. You at least have a little bit of success in the past 15 years. I think the Pats have a couple successes in there, if I remember correctly. And Ralph Conti chiming in says, no, Irad Ortiz at Gulfstream Park this Sunday. He's Tampa Bay, so should get some good or better prices at Gulfstream Park. Yeah, you're not paying the IRAD tax, but unfortunately, the tax mostly just shifts over to everybody else. But guys, enough babbling on. Got the spotted cow. You know what it is. Up in Wisconsin, can't get away from this stuff. And trust me, I don't want to. It's probably the best beer I've ever had. Yingling, though, Pat, Yingling is shipped over to Illinois now. They have drafts of Yingling, so I've been partaking in that. But cheers to everybody out there. Let's get her going as we're starting in race number 9. We're gonna do the late pick 4 at Gulfstream Park, because of course we want to touch on the Super Bowl later. So as I bring up the Equibase right now, and as this is Gulfstream Park on Bettin N Boozin, you know that we do not have morning lines, and unfortunately we don't have numbers in the PPs either. So again, guys, as always, please try and be courteous and say the number as well as the horse name as we continue to talk about. The first race we'll talk about is 6 furlongs on the dirt. It's allowance optional, 20,000 for race number 9. Draws a field of 7, and of course can't check the morning line favorite, but if anyone's looked at this card, everyone knows that there should be a pretty heavy morning line favorite in this race, coming from the number 1, Hurricane Nelson, Luis Saez and Christophe Clement, with this very talented Florida-bred. Raging Fury for Nolan Ramsey is probably your clear second choice, and then everyone else can be vying for that third choice of favoritism. And we do have Charlie's picks. Of course, he's not here. Hopefully he joins us soon. But as you guys can see right here, none of us are getting very cute in this race. There's a lot of 1s, a lot of 1-4s. So Noah does have the 6 in second, and I have the 6 in third. So Charlie does as well. So I do respect that opinion. Pat's going with number 3, my voodoo doll, in third. Guys, like I said, not too much to talk about really about this one. He's definitely the best based on numbers. He looks to have a pretty easy pace scenario coming into this race. I will show the time for him first, but please go into why you think Hurricane Nelson. This is almost basically a 1-horse race in a lot of our eyes.
Well, you kind of alluded to it. If he had someone that was maybe going to show some pace pressure, maybe I wouldn't like him as much, just because not often in races like this do you get such a heavy favorite, or is what we presume to be a pretty heavy favorite that's 0 for 6 on a faster track. So obviously we've talked about this horse before. It took a while to break his maiden. Clement threw him in that synthetic race last time for Florida Breds. It was just kind of a weird spot. Ran fine. He's given him some time off. Saez hops on, and like you said, it would be more of a concern if someone were to show some pressure, but it just doesn't really seem like it's going to come from anywhere else. Pat, you got anything more insightful?
No, I don't have much. This was a horse we've talked about, through the summer, that has like the seconditis, being the favorite up in Saratoga a lot and running in, pretty deep maiden races. So when that kind of happens, you kind of think this horse might be the goods, and then just, running second most of the time. This horse is, tough to bet on at the price that the horse is going to be, but Noah alluded to it. The pace is the factor for me, and the ultimate decision to just, put this horse on top. And if this horse doesn't win, it's most likely going to be a bomb or the 4.
Yeah, it could be the 4 or anybody. I mean, well, that's really insightful by me. It could be the 4 or anybody else. I mean, really, the only competition I see to this horse is the 4. And then it could be, if it's not the 4, it could literally be the other 5. Like, that's how It probably should have worded it, but you're talking about loaded maiden races, Pat. Deterministic, if that name brings a bell to a lot of people. Bentornato, if that was in the restricted race, of course, but if that name rings a bell. Reynolds Channel is a very nice horse up in New York. Banned for Life. Montalcino is a very, very talented Cherie DeVoe runner. You guys all know how I feel about that, as my dear F loves to do this on me all the time. But Montalcino just came back to just lose at Fairgrounds to Miles Ahead, but he got a 103 buyer. I think that
horse, the second place horse.
Mac came in. He ran last week when Picks and Ponies covered Withers Day, and he looked very good. Just got beat by Ouster on the lead, but again, very deep main races. Finally got off the second-itis, as you alluded to, Pat. Granted, it wasn't an off the turf, so this could be one you try to play against. But again, that pace scenario is going to be very tough. Pat, you have the horse in second. So does Charlie Sudawai, the number 4 Raging Fury. Looks to be by far the next closest competition to the one. Should be sitting not far back at all. And if there, like we kind of alluded to, if there's anyone to beat the one, probably the 4 is your best bet.
Yeah, for sure. The 4 is going to have to go here to have any chance. And the problem here is that I just don't know if this horse wants to be as forward as it's going to have to be, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had some impressive wins went off the pace. I mean, there was, that one back in October.
Yeah,
you're watching that horse won handily. So I don't know. I think this horse is one to get in the exacta. I mean, the exacta is not going to pay much if it's 1-4, but that's where you try and find a price in here. But I'm not sure if I can really get one.
I can smell a Matt Miller contest player from a mile away.
3-1 exacta.
Yeah, this could definitely be it for sure. The other thing I wanted to bring up, granted that last race, like you said, Noah, was for Florida Breds for Hurricane Nelson, but all of his other maiden races, they've all been against open company, and again, very good open company as that. But a lot of these horses have been coming out of state bred companies, so just wanted to bring that up as well. The number 6, Noah, is Roar Ready, which I'm very happy to see you have this horse in second. Obviously, a lot of us have the horse somewhere, but I thought that last race was sneaky good, and he should get a little bit of a better trip in here. But as Pat alluded to with the 4, might just be a little too far back to win a race like this, but definitely could pick up some minor placings.
Yeah, and Roar Ready, I thought, ran a pretty sneaky good race last time, like you said. I know the 4 was favored in that race, and Roar Ready was 9-1. But Roar Ready, I thought, had a little bit of trouble, was in kind of a tight spot early, got shuffled back, and came with a pretty nice run. And, the 4, who you guys have in second, was just getting a little leg weary, and that's why Roar Ready went by. And obviously, there are some concerns when you have a horse that's 1 for 14, but this isn't really a race for first. This is a race for second, just because the 1's in the race and looks to be the moto obvious. So just looking for some value to try to get into second. And if you're going to get a better price on the 6, who just beat the 4, I don't see why you can't do it again.
And you're talking about, 1 for 14, although he's 8 for 14 underneath. So, what should be about 5-1, I would assume, in a spot like this, maybe even a little bit more than that. I feel like Roar Ready has a perfect chance to, round out exactas and trifectas, especially if he can build off that last race. Pat, I'll let you end this conversation here with the number 3, My Voodoo Doll. Horse coming over from synthetic, but has had some good works on the dirt. And obviously, if Mark Cassidy and Johnny V are going to hop this horse in here, they're not doing it for fun.
No, I don't think so. This horse has, had 2 consistent back-to-back races. Synthetic last race, just a weird start. Wasn't really all there, but did come on well. Ended up, did lose by a decent amount. But I wanted to give this horse a try in the trifecta. I think this horse 2-back was very impressive on the turf. So hopefully, that could translate back in here. And, Cassie's been ultra consistent, as he always is down in South Florida. So, I'm not getting creative here. My Voodoo Doll, I'm not sure really what we're going to be looking at odds-wise. But if you could drill a straight try with, a couple horses like this, it'll pay.
Yeah, I mean, you're 1-4 with like 2 horses, and you could definitely make money like $5 try for $10, and you could probably make, 6, 7, 8 to 1 your money. There's nothing wrong with that. Rob N posted in the chat. He said, yeah, I'm assuming you mean the 1, Rob. Average when you posted this, average equibase speed figure of a 92, 6th closest with a 79, so 13-point difference as well. He says Ensign Parker is a reverse tri-key horse in this race, and this is a horse that's been around in South Florida for a long time. Back when I used to be Mr. South Beach, I would basically, when Arlington went away, I kind of just gravitated my whole bankroll to Gulfstream when I was honestly much worse, better and player than I am now. That's not a shot at Mr. South Beach either. But I remember this horse's name, and that was 4 years ago. Now coming in here, I mean, yeah, this horse has seen about as everything you need to see, and he has run some good races even recently. That 70 is not really that far off of like a third place in this race, so could definitely see a reverse tri-key. He's most likely going to be a pretty high price for what a 7-horse field can produce, just because he's older. He's 2 for 27 at Gulfstream Park on the dirt, so definitely could be one to round out your tries if you're looking for a decent price play. So Rob and I like the thinking. I'm going 146. Noah's going 164. Charlie's going 146 as well with me, and Pat's going 143 in race number 9. Guys, we'll move to the 10th race, which is the feature on the card for Saturday. It is the Ladies Turf Sprint Stakes, and it draws a field of 9. And as I bring up our picks right now, little 2v2 action in this one. Charlie and Noah, are both going with the 7, Just to Care, who I would argue is probably the morning line favorite, Luis Saez, Brian Lynch. And Pat, I like the thinking, Pat. Pat's going with the number 9 with me. Beauty of the Sea, the Florida bred for Raylu and Joseph Orseno. As I bring up the PPs right now, Noah, you get to tell, as you're the only one here on the screen with the number 7, Just to Care on top. Obviously, Pat and I both have her in second, so we both think, especially off that last race, she's got a good shot. What'd you like most about the 7, Just to Care?
Yeah, really starting this late pick 4 sequence out with some bombs, that's for sure. But Just to Care, I mean, just the way that she won last time, and going into that race, primarily she had been a speed type. She came from 4 off of it, which, going into the race, you would have never thought that was possible. Yet she did it. She did it well. She was pretty well back that day. And just the versatility that you see now, that when she kind of, maybe she hasn't transitioned, but she showed that she can be a little versatile. Obviously likes here at Gulfstream. And it seems like Saez kind of has a choice whether if he kind of wants to engage with the 8 and the 9, because I think the 8 and the 9 are the only 2 other speeds in the race. Saez can either, if he breaks well, just kind of go and see how far it takes him and maybe just show the class over the other 2. Or if those 2 are adamant to go, I think Saez, now that she's got that versatility under her belt, can just kind of sit third and then judge things from there.
I thought it was completely due to the trainer switch. I thought the trainer switch was very good for this horse. Coming off of Rusty Arnold at Keeneland, not that there's anything wrong with Rusty Arnold. He's a very good trainer in his own right. But obviously Brian Lynch found something in this horse to be able to rate off the pace. You can see the only wins that back at Gulfstream going 5 and 23, this horse did have a off the pace maiden win, but since then has only had wins on the lead. So being able to have a little bit of time off into a new barn and win doing something she's never done before, I thought that was very, very impressive. And definitely the way she did it, she never looked like a loser. She was powering away the whole time, never got weary or anything like that. And I think flat 5 is her best distance. So Just to Care is definitely one that needs to be at least looked at, let alone should be the favorite. Don't know how bad of a price you're going to get, considering this is a pretty wide open turf sprint. But I think Just to Care is definitely, I would argue, the most likely favorite, and most likely winner. However, Pat, I love that you're coming with me here with the pick with the 9, Beauty of the Sea. A little bit less connection based, really, right? You got Raylu, who hasn't had the best meet down in South Florida this winter. Joseph Orseno, even though he wins at a pretty decent clip, he is almost a basically straight South Florida guy. But this is one that's shipped all around the country and should be a little bit closer to the pace than based off of Just to Care's last one. I think that if the 8 breaking to her inside is really the only speed, if she just sits off the 8, she could get the jump on the 7 and really have a good idea to win this race.
Yeah, the 2 things with turf sprints for me, one of which is, I like the horses that just get to be forwardly placed, regardless if that's on the lead or near the lead. Just being more forward, you got to deal with a ton of stuff coming from off the pace.
Yeah.
Now, Just to Care has proven that is tactical, after that last performance, which is great. But I think Beauty of the Sea, has proven being on the outside is not a problem at all. So
no,
I think this horse is going to be right there at the wire. It's just a matter of if that 8 can just make it easier for the 9. Other than that, I mean, you look back at it, those 2 performances back on the turf, those were impressive performances. And, obviously the trainer Orseno is not afraid to put this horse, against, deeper competition. So that leads me to believe that this horse is going to be right there.
Yeah, and the other thing that I like about this horse is, like, as I kind of mentioned with Just a Care, I think flat 5 is this horse's best distance with Beauty of the Sea. Go back to Gulfstream Park last year in the 75,000 handicap, won easily going away. Then you got to go farther back for a flat 5s. I thought she ran great up at Woodbine, just got a little bit leg weary at the end. And as you mentioned, Pat, I love that she's drawn outside with this type of kind of like speed, but is better with a target type. There's really no one to the inside as I scroll through the field here. No one really to the inside as of late has wanted to go straight to the lead. It's really like Shoshana maybe, but it almost seems like in her last 2 races at flat 5, she's been a little slow out of the gate. Weekend Rags definitely doesn't want to go. Just to Care, as we mentioned, off the trainer switch, could see a new side of her. Opponent's Hope, as I mentioned, is really the only one that's a straight dead send. So if Beauty of the Sea is just going to sit right to her flank and go by at the top of the stretch, I love that type of trip, especially in a turf sprint where try to get yourself in the least trouble as possible. That horse sitting right to the outside is just not first over as they call it in harness, but just flanking the leader. I feel like is the best position, especially on this Gulfstream Park turf course. So Pat, love that you're going with me there. I mentioned the 8 Opponent's Hope. This horse is just going to be a straight dead send. I like that Joel Rosario is on this horse. I like him on the lead. I really only like Joel Rosario whether he's either on the lead or he's all the way in the back, because either one is where he seems to have the best judgment. Not again, I haven't ridden a horse. You guys can clown me all you want for that, but that's the way I feel. And
I feel you're a closer as a jockey. I think you'd be a good closer.
Yeah, really? You think so? Probably because I'd weigh the horse down 20 lengths behind and try and fly at the end. But Opponent's Hope, I feel like could just catch a piece, even though, as I mentioned, the 9 is speed with her. There's really no one else to go with her. So if she can just hang on for a piece in third, that's where I'm looking there. Noah, you and Charlie both have the number 2, Karaya. This is a horse that just lost to Just a Care last time, but was flying late. She's had races where she's been up close, but it seems like her last 2, they've really found something that this horse likes to do, and it's run with a target.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think if you're a fan of the 2, you have to hope that the 7 and 8 and 9 set things up. I thought her last race was just as good as Just a Care's, and she's going to be probably 3 or 4 times the price as Just a Care in here. It was just more of, for me, a concern with more of the 8 and the 9 rather than a liking to the 2. I did like the 1, if you'll let me go ahead and touch on the 1.
Yep.
I was a big fan of the 1 in this race just because I think she's a little slower. If you look at her turf races closely, she's got 86 back here at March. Fast forward to the Royal North, Safi kind of kept her up at Woodbine and didn't really bother to bring her down here to South Florida. Threw her in a really nice Royal North, which was a grade 3, and just had a disaster of a trip. In the listed stake at Woodbine in August, we had a nice second behind Loon Cry, who came back and won. So Safi finally brings her back down to South Florida, where obviously we know this is where he traditionally trains. And she's just working lights out right now. She threw in a 34-4, going 3 furlongs last time on February 1st. And there's really not much else to say other than it's Safi on a Saturday, and this horse is going to be quite a price. So I think one that's going to save all the ground and is definitely going to be a price on the board.
Yeah, and the reason why I didn't include Blind Spot, I just don't think flat 5 might be the best for her. The reason why I think she might have been kept, at least when I was looking at this, she might have been kept up at Woodbine is because Woodbine runs those 6 and 6.5 on their crazy dimension of a turf course. So that's my thinking. But again, if Safi, like you said, Safi's not going to throw in here. She doesn't think, because she ran fine back at last year at Gulfstream, just not enough when it comes down to it at the flat 5. But Blind Spot could be one to pick up the pieces going into the ladies turf sprint stakes. But guys, we'll continue to move on here, as I just saw our other co-host has just finally joined us. So good for him to finally join the show. In the ladies turf sprint stakes, I'm going 9-7-8. Noah's going 7-1-2. Charlie's going 7-2-8. Pat's going 9-7-8. Guys, we'll move on to race number 11, which is everybody's favorite time of the day. It is the the weekly Tapeta race that you have to include in the late pick 5 on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. But this one is at least an allowance optional, claiming not a $10,000 claimer. Going another flat 5 race on the Tapeta draws a field of 8. And as I bring up the Equibase right now, of course, again, we do not have morning line favorites. And this one's a little bit tougher to decipher here. And as I switched over the picks, so switching over now, you guys can see I'm going with the 2 Band on a Run, the Maryland bred for Misael Jaramillo and Christophe Clement. Noah's going the number 8, Tiffany Gold for Johnny V and Victor Barbosa. So is Charlie. And Pat's going with the number 1, Miss Vivienne, I believe is how you say that. And I probably finally got a horse name right first time I'm looking at it. So Luis Saez and Martin Drexler on the 1. And Pat, I'll let you go first, honestly, because you and I are the lone wolves, but of course I don't go first. So, Pat, what'd you like most about your number 1 horse, Miss Vivienne, in this race?
Yeah, Miss Vivienne, has been very consistent on the synthetic. 6 for 9 in the money. Just seems to run consistent and has progressively gotten better. At age 5. I've seen the consistency here, especially at the 5 furlongs. That was a pretty fast pace last time. And, obviously on the synthetic, the paces seem to heat up a little bit more. Horses closer to the lead seem to run a little bit better. And I think second time, out off a decent time off, this horse should be even better in here. And I don't think the rail should be a problem. So I'm hoping this will just set up for the horse to break out of the gate well and can kind of just take them all the way.
Yeah, and as I showed the time form there, they have Miss Vivienne on the lead. She's going to have at least a little bit of company in this race as opposed to the other ones we've kind of looked at today. But she has done her best running on the lead, especially in that last race here at Gulfstream, first time after she's obviously campaigned up at Woodbine. So definitely makes a ton of sense. I have her in third. And then Noah and Charlie both have her in second. So we obviously all think she's very live in this race. But Charlie and Noah, you guys are both going with number 8. Tiffany Gold. We've talked at length about how good Victor Barbosa is down at Gulfstream Park. Johnny V hops aboard on this one first time, so definitely could be live in this race. Charlie, I'll let you go first since you haven't had 2 races of talking, so I know you want to get your talking in.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I just think, and I'll let Noah add on if he agrees with me, but I think Tiffany's Gold, one has arguably the most consistent form and has been running against some decent ones. Obviously the winner last time out is running the stakes race or the turf sprint that we have earlier that you guys covered. And, on debut, obviously we haven't seen this horse on Tapeta since the debut where this horse was able to win coming from just off the pace. And, has been running against decent company. Again, I think the figures fit. And to me, at least the way I sort of see this is if for whatever reason they're not going fast enough, I think this one can go to the lead. But I think what is more likely is Tiffany's Gold will just sit right off the speed and just trip out.
Noah?
Yeah, I agree with everything Charlie said. This looked like a pretty promising filly early on. She broke her maiden on the synthetic, won next time out with 87 and a 105 time form. And it just looks like she had a little bit of issues, couldn't quite figure herself out. She's kind of getting back to that form, as we can see. She's put together 279s, which you would think would kind of move her up a little bit. You'd expect to step forward here. And time form likes those races, a 102 and a 105 in the last 2. It just looks like she's on the up and up. And if you look at the field as a whole, there's really not a ton of horses that you trust to kind of pass others. So I just kind of see Johnny V probably sitting right off the lead. And if anyone's going to pass anyone, I think it's probably her.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, it is a little bit tough to pass at these Gulfstream Speedway types of distances on the Tapeta. So, but definitely understand your point as could have been completely overlooked by me in the number 8, Tiffany Gold. So I'll have to go back and look at it. I went with the number 2, guys, which Band on a Run for Christophe Clement and Misael Jaramillo. This horse should be pretty much on the lead. Did have a little bit of success passing at least one horse going out at Laurel Park, which for Michael Merriman, he runs out in those Maryland, so that doesn't really bother me too much. Christophe Clement, first race last time off of a very, very long layoff, over a year-long layoff. Irad hopped aboard on this one. This horse was very well backed off that layoff. So I have to imagine that this horse is very well liked by the barn, and they throw her back into a spot where they're not necessarily dropping her back because remember she did win her maiden race at 45,000, but Clement placed her in an optional 62,000. Now places her in another optional claimer in here as well. So riding the Clement bar, I probably won't be favored, looking for a nice middling price. But even if she sits pocket trip, I feel like she could have a very, very good chance at it. Or if she just goes to the lead, as I mentioned with these 5 furlong Tapeta races, you see it more often than not, especially if it rains outside, that it can play towards the front very heavily. So Band on a Run will be my pick in these 5 furlong Tapeta races. You guys know my favorite races that they ever run anywhere in the United States. Last horse I want to talk about real quick is we did mention everybody, right? Yeah, Pat, because we had the number 6.
Did we
talk
about the 6?
No, we didn't. So Charlie, you can go ahead and end us off. Oh, Darlin, right, for Happy Altar, and that's a horse I have in second. So I'm glad that you have this horse somewhere.
Yeah, just another one. I will say, I think what makes this one the most interesting is by far, the most experience and great success on the Tapeta. 14 out of 16 times in the money, 5 firsts, 5 seconds. Has plenty of numbers, and you could argue probably the best numbers on the Tapeta of any horse in this field. Gets Rosario aboard, which I think is certainly interesting, and genuinely don't mean that to we try to make fun of him. I just think because he's had Zayas on him so much, it was a little surprising. But yeah, last time ran in a handicap, has been running against tougher and has run against Reef Runner, who's a horse that I love. I just think Darlin makes a lot of sense. It was a horse I was thinking about moving up even into second. I think this one could certainly make sense and is one I would definitely use in horizontals. Yeah,
I just think, especially if they go pretty quick up front, she's going to have first run on a lot of other horses behind. Also lost to Crownsway legend Talkin' Tipsy right there in the running lines. Got to bring up whenever I see one of my horses in the running lines. But yeah, I thought she's run very, very good races, especially on the synthetic. She's 14 for 16 in the money on the synthetic, 5 of those being wins, and 7 for 8 at the flat 5 distance. So I think this is her best surface, her best distance. I just feel like if there's one that's going to take to the trip that she's given, I think it's number 6, Oh Darlin, who, again, anyone can win these. Let's be honest, anyone can win these Tapeta 5 furlong races. But if there's one that's going to trip out, in my opinion, it could be the number 6, Oh Darlin, in this one. But guys, let's move on to the last race. And for race number 11, I'm going 2-6-1. Noah's going 8-1-2. Charlie's going 8-1-6, and Pat's going 1-8-4. Guys, moving on to the last race here of the day, and it is an almost impossible starter optional claiming for 35,000, going a mile on the turf. And as I showed, it's a full field of 12. Finally, morning line favorite. Your guess is as good as mine. You'll see it tomorrow. I'm not even going to try and take a guess here. And Howard, I just saw your weird horse for the Comanche train. I don't disagree with you there for the number 2 Band on a Run, but it's kind of why I like her more, even honestly. So I'm moving over to race number 12, moving over the picks right now. I'm going with the 6. Noah and Charlie are both going with the 10. I have the 10 in second. Pat's going with the 8. And not a single person. Oh, no, Charlie, you do have the 6 in second. So that's good at least to see that someone is agreeing with me in some regard. But I guess I'll let the Band of Brothers talk first, and then, Pat, I'll let you go next. The number 10 could be the favorite. We'll have to see how it shakes out. I'm due the number 10 for Jorge Ruiz and Ken Sweezy when it coming out of a very nice maiden win, although it was at the claiming level. Now taking a little bit jump up in class, Noah and Charlie, but still should be a pretty big factor in here.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to try to make a joke about us picking the horse for the name because it is by far the best name in the field. If I had to guess, we're probably looking at maybe the second or third choice. I have a feeling it's going to be Dual Income that'll be the favorite. But yeah, Noah and I actually had to cover this race, and man, if you saw our cross country pick 5 tickets, or coast to coast, you could see just how difficult we thought this race truly was. Ultimately, just landed on this one because I thought that last effort was really impressive. Obviously, it was 21-1 2 back then, 37-1 in the race after that, and got bet all the way down to 2-1. And I understand, obviously, it's the drop from special weight to regular mains, but nonetheless, to get bet down to 2-1 clearly means that people saw something as well. And I just thought, for a barn that doesn't have a crazy amount of runners, but has been on fire lately, and obviously also saw the stat of winning 22% after winning last start. I just think I'm due makes a ton of sense, and I thought that effort was super impressive last time out. The Buyer obviously wasn't a crazy jump, but you could see that Ruiz was confident. He had plenty of horse down the stretch, and this one was, clearly had enough left in the tank where I think the stretch out will be just fine, and I think could very well build off this start.
Well, the nice thing about this one, though, is the 7.5 at Gulfstream Park is still 2 turns. So she still does have 2-turn winning experience and doing it very well. Obviously, a little bit jump up in class, but that shouldn't sway this horse, at least in my eyes, either.
No, I mean, nobody in this field is worthy of being scared of. I think it's important to mention that last time I know he dropped from maiden special weight to maiden claiming. We obviously mentioned that that's the biggest drop in racing. He got Lasix for the first time, and I think that might have been the key or the switch that kind of turned him on. Got a really good trip, of course, and won pretty easily, but did it well. Looked like he had more in the tank, was kind of in hand, and Reese housed back on. I mentioned it on the show last night. Sweezy's not really a guy that you think would send a lot of stock down to South Florida, but boy, has he done well. He's got 7 winners and 18 out of 33 in the money, obviously 21%. So in a race that is just completely wide open, to Charlie's point, I believe he had 6 when we gave out our Coast to Coast Pick 5. I had 8. So I wasn't quite a few horses. But yeah, it's certainly one that could be considered in just this big bunch of that.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have the 6th and 2nd. To me, it's another one. It's another one of these races where if it's not the 6 or the 10 for me, it could be so many different others. Dual income for Joel Rosario, Joseph Orseno. Good combination we've talked about already. Got that main win at the drop-in class as well on the turf. Tried the synthetic, didn't have the same amount of kick. Now comes back to the turf, which I think could really benefit dual income.
I completely agree. And that was another thing I touched on the show. Is I think there's a few horses in this race where you could certainly see after their turf experience that switch to the synthetic, they just weren't the same horse. And I think that's just the reality. There's some horses where it's the other way around. They're just not really taken to the turf, so they switch to Tapeta and see a different side of them. And to me, obviously, it was very interesting when this horse Two-Back was switching from the dirt to the turf, because obviously it wasn't just dropping, on the huge drop for maiden special weight, but also switching onto the surface and picked up IRAD. And I thought it looked really impressive. Another one who kind of reminded me similar of I'm Due, where this horse had plenty in the tank and was winning going away down the stretch. And what I thought was really interesting was just that when I watched that Tapeta race, and I don't know if you agree, Kyle, but I just didn't see the same kind of kick. It just didn't look like Dual Income was able to show that kind of kick on the surface. And it truly looked not like a class difference, but genuinely just that he didn't take to the Tapeta nearly as well as he did the turf. I like that he's back on the surface. Also had that nice pull of work in 47 last time. And again, like I said, I have a feeling people are going to key in on that effort Two-Back, and that's why this one will be the favorite.
Yeah, but even the Two-Back of the Two-Back, the I'm Due still got a little bit, obviously 1 point, but got a better buyer figure than Dual Income did in that win and last time out with the 67. So I think it'll be a pretty close fight between the two of them. I think it'll be 2 and then kind of everybody else. I feel like it'll be a pretty close gap and then a pretty big gap to the rest of the field. But I do think Dual Income's got a very big shot. And coming back to the turf where we know this horse has run his best race, even though the better buyer was last race. Visually, the $35,000 claimer was the best, and we'll see what can happen in this race. Pat, I'll let you talk next, my friend. You got the number 8 right on top. Sell It for Jose D'Angelo and Javier Castellano. Another horse that's coming back to the turf where it should be the preferred surface.
Yeah, for sure. Horses run, fine. It kind of fits right in the middle of all these in here. I think D'Angelo's been great all meet. He's really started to come on as a trainer. Obviously the Mackenzie sire's been fantastic too over the year. Listen, I think this horse is going to be more forwardly placed in here in a race that, I kind of want a horse that's going to be more on the front end because I'm just not really sure how good most of these are. And that's kind of why I fell on the 8. And also, I'll just go right into my 1, 2, Honor Mags, because this horse is going to be 20 to 1. It's going to obviously have to show it after that solid 4 buyer on debut. That thing is beautiful. Listen, I think the horse is going to be on the lead. I don't know if the horse is good enough, but in this type of race, I'm going to try and get this horse in as a bomb, and we'll go from there. I mean, this is a wide open field.
It's a very tough race, and I don't think any of us need to talk about. You mentioned number 1 Honor Mags, who you actually find a little bit spoiler alert. You talk about here in a second. Again, Mary Leitner 3. Even though she's only 1 for 13, again 8 for 13 in the money, gets Zayas back aboard as well. So definitely a little some pretty positive signs on a horse that should be a pretty good price. So good luck with that horse as well. last horse we'll talk about here is actually let's talk about the number 12, Noah. Dime Poppy, as
Dime Poppy. Oh my God, the pronunciation.
Dime Poppy, excuse me. Dime Poppy. I didn't watch the race, Matt. I saw that in the background there. I didn't watch the race back in the pulpit, but anyway, Noah, go ahead as you have Dime Poppy in third.
Yeah, and Pat's got him in third as well. So
Yep.
thinking similarly, he actually won his debut at 36-1, which I don't think you're going to get the same price on Saturday, but maybe a little bit of a price, which doesn't really bother me just because he was bought for 12,000. They put him in for 35, so they just said, F it, see what happens. Got the job done at 60 with the 63 buyer, Had enough confidence to actually throw him in the pulpit. Obviously, was kind of run off his feet. Nivago's a nice horse that we've talked about and came back and won. Hit that reviews good as well. Gave him a little bit of time to progress and develop from 2 to 3. And Sias hops on. Obviously, going to have to worry about saving ground from the 12 post, but it doesn't really matter who you are, what level you're at. If you're running 45-2 at 4 furlongs, that's something to take note. So I don't know if Sias is able to save some ground, you're going to get a price on anybody, and maybe this is the one.
Yeah, and followed with a 59-4 work as well after that. So again, so wide open. It's going to be tough for those horses to the outside to run. This is a mile at Gulfstream Park. That turn comes up pretty quick, but the 12 should just be able to drop back and shouldn't have too much trouble on the turn. I'm going 6-10-2 in the last race at Gulfstream Park. Noah's going 10-2-12. Charlie's going 10-6-5. Pat's going 8-1-12. And again, guys, if you guys are enjoying the podcast, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate it. And also don't go anywhere, as we're going to talk the Super Bowl here for about 20 to 30 minutes after our racing coverage concludes. So please do not go anywhere. We're not only talking about racing tonight. Patrick, you already kind of touched on it a little bit, but your one best bet is Honor Mags underneath that we just talked about in race number 12. Anything more you want to add on this one for your kind of reverse exacta and tri-key horse?
Yeah, I thought the first 3 races that we covered, I know race 11 might be a little wide open, but I think you kind of single a couple horses in there. I just think I'm going to try and catch a price in here, and I think in that race, in race 12, if you can key a horse in a try, and kind of open yourself up into I'd say 6 or 7 horses, this try is going to pay a ton. So I'm going to see if I can get Honor Mags in there and build my bankroll for Sunday, because I think there's a game on.
Yeah, something like that. I think we might be talking about that in 2 minutes. But yeah, I mean, you hit on it, Pat, a little bit. Like, there's so many different ways you can go in race 12. I think no matter what, unless it comes chalk, which still should pay actually a pretty decent amount. But if you get Honor Mags in there, you'll definitely be able to get paid on some value. So good luck, Pat, with Honor Mags. Noah, going to you next. No, you didn't give me best bets, did you?
Go to Charlie first. I'll give him 2.
All right, go ahead. Charlie, we'll go to you next. You're going... Didn't even notice this. Charlie doing Charlie things, doing Chuckles things. Race 4, a win on the number 11, No More War with an exacta as well in 11/10. And a race number 9, actually a race we talked about tonight in a double 1/7.
Well, I figured if I was going to miss some of the races we covered, might as well just pick something off what we covered anyway.
Jeez.
Yeah, No More War is a horse who I was all over and telling anybody would listen to me to take last time. Ran into a bunch of trouble, a terrible trip, and just missed. I like a lot in this spot. And then the 10 is Excite, who actually also came out of that race, was a first-time starter that ran absolutely huge. I would even probably realistically play a small 10-11 just to hedge myself. But I should get a pretty square price in that race. I'd have to imagine both of them will be at least 7-2. And then going into the last leg, the other best bet. I don't know what you guys thought about that first race, but I think Hurricane Nelson could honestly just take him around the track and is going to be too tough for the rest of them.
Exactly.
And then going into the turf sprint, which I know using a turf sprint is kind of crazy to do, but Justicare is another one I love. And I think, like I was saying with Noah on our show last night, is I think the first horse in God knows how long that I've given out in a turf sprint is the best bet. So that's just how much I appreciate that horse. So that's my Stone Cold double.
Well, how about I'll play one race on Saturday, Charlie? How about that? Does that look familiar to you? We all thought the same thing on race 9. It was Hurricane Nelson has a complete one-way around the track. Doesn't look like anyone's going to press that horse and should be by far good enough. So it's almost kind of again, it could be anyone, I guess, but if at anyone, it's going to be the 4, but this looks like a pretty stone cold single to a lot of us. And we like the 7 a lot just to care, but Pat and I both like the number 9, who was Beauty of the Sea in that race for Ray Lou and Joseph Orseno. So going to definitely include that horse in there, as that horse should bump up the double prices a little bit and allow me to hit the Matt Miller Stone Cold 1x2 double as I hope to get a little bit of chuckle out of him in the background. But guys, that will conclude our Gulfstream Park coverage again, guys, but don't go anywhere, as we're going to be talking about the big game coming up this Sunday. There's so many different betting options. We know all of you guys are going to be betting it, so why not stick around and hear what we have to say? But in order for us to hear what we have to say, we have to bring on our special guest. We've alluded to it many times. Betting strategist extraordinaire, as I try to make him as uncomfortable as possible. But Matt Miller, my friend, welcome to the show.
That'll do. Uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm thinking about, you could have had Chris Felica or Dan Patrick or someone actually cool, and here everyone is waiting for a special guest, and it's just me. So I've done my homework. I've got some thoughts actually ready for you guys, and yeah, let's go through it.
I was going to say, and you have it in your name tag right there. I was going to mention your book, A Better Way of Thinking, that you can get at abetterwayofthinking.com. Not only talks about, people know you, especially in this space, for your horse racing contests and stuff like that, but your book does cover a lot on sports betting, and you're not just a one-way street in that regard.
No, I've actually been shockingly successful at essentially breaking even. I know that sounds ridiculous, but with all the bonuses, with all the, with everything layered in, I mean, you don't get traditional rebates like you do with horse racing, but I've now got a record going of a couple of years with a volume that is almost absurd. And I am within pennies of dead even on the whole thing. And that's before the extras from FanDuel and things like that. So strangely, I look at breaking even in sports as a pretty decent accomplishment. I get to basically bet whatever I want. And after a couple of years, I'm going to be about even, at least in theory. So we're going to do better than that this weekend, though. I got a pretty good opinion here. And this feels like a pretty bettable game.
Yeah, and I think that you're going to get, because there's a lot of interesting money that we'll touch on in a little bit, because that's going to be one of the points we want to talk about. But there's so many different ways to make money in the Super Bowl. We have 3 main questions we're going to highlight, and at the end of this podcast, we're going to give you guys best bets on what we're trying to play around for the Super Bowl. I briefed all the guys on the questions below, so we'll go through them in here. First of all, Stretch Runner 41 on X says, "Is there a recording of this podcast?" Yes. After this show ends, please go over to youtube.com, type in the search bar HHH Racing Podcast, and you'll find it popping up right there. If you click onto our channel, there's a playlist that says Bettin N Boozin. It'll be the first one on there. So there's be a recording of every single podcast. So if you don't catch it live, you can catch a recording of it afterwards.
Although you don't get the chat for like an hour or something like. For some reason, the chat lags. I don't get that.
I don't get it either, and comments aren't available right away. It's all its own thing. But either way, guys, let's hop right into this here. So as we all know, there's Super Bowl. I looked it up on FanDuel before this, which actually the odds have changed since I went and looked. The line it was at -2 for the Chiefs for the longest time. It's back down to 1.5. But the opening line was KC -1, and that was the opening line. But they have jumped up to 1.5. However, I'll continue to reference this as we go along, but as I bring up a little bit interesting thing, the betting trends that have been going on for everywhere, they keep track of all the money. You can see it's a little bit hard to read. Try and make it bigger for you guys. See, they have KC at -2 on the spread, but 80% of the money is on the Eagles +2 right now, according to this website. Again, you guys can take this for what it is. 67% of the money on the money line is through the Eagles. However, more bet percentage is on the Kansas City Chiefs as well. And then 72% of the money, 77% of the bets are on the over of 48.5. So I don't know about you guys. The 2 first things that jump out to me when I first look at that is the Eagles are +2. They have 80% of the bet as an underdog, but they're less in the money line bet percentage. So it's a very interesting combination of, where the money is going. And Matt, we'll talk about this more in a little bit, but just as an overview, when you look at that, our first question is going to be like, when you start looking at the Super Bowl, what's your approach to when you first look to try and break it down on what you want to bet on?
All right. So give me like 2 straight minutes. This will be the only preaching I do the whole time. But
Go for it.
But I do think this is a critical exercise for people looking at this kind of thing. The first question you have to ask yourself is what you're trying to do today. Yeah. What is the point of betting the Super Bowl? Are you trying to hit the coolest parlay? Are you trying to hit the one with the most legs? Do you want to be able to say, I called it, that there was a safety? Or are you trying to make some money? And I'm not really making fun of either person, but I'm assuming the people here are trying to make money betting and not just off, making crazy whatever. I would then look within yourself and ask what your opinion is of what's going to happen. Just before looking at odds, before looking at anything, just what do you think is going to happen? And try a little bit as you start thinking about props or whatever. Why or who? And so just get a loose idea of what you're looking for before you pick up your phone and you go shopping for bets. The next thing I do, and again, we're not even getting to the picks yet, you're going to get more bonuses slammed down your throat by these sports books in the next few days than you know what to do with. Don't bet early. Wait for the bonuses. They're coming, and they're going to juice your payouts by 20, 25, 30, 50%. I would also, for this purpose, have more than one sportsbook account. I'd even consider opening another one. A lot of these will give you deposit bonus. Yeah. So you can start out the day up $1,000 in free bets or $2,000 in free bets. So, or 500, depends on your state or whatever. Mm-hmm. But again, this is all just being a good consumer. The other key thing to talk about is looking, and I did this before coming on, looking at Caesars and looking at FanDuel. These odds are not the same. Mm-hmm. They're pretty meaningful differences. You're not going to see big differences on the line, the 1.5 or 2, but you will on Pacheco for a touchdown or, yards for Mahomes or whatever. So it's absolutely worth it. At least just check 2 devices or toggle back and forth and see if you're getting the best price. All right. So that is my general so for this particular Super Bowl, if you want to then get to, how I applied that.
Yeah.
I don't buy in any of the noise. I have heard people all year saying this is the year that Kansas City is going to have a hard time. And they just keep proving people wrong over and over. This is not an anti-KC pick. It's not a Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce have nothing to do with it. I just think the Eagles look like the best team in football. And my opinion is that they're going to win the game pretty much start to finish. And that's important for purposes of the way I would then approach the betting.
Right. Yeah.
I'm also going to assume that Jalen Hurts and or Saquon Barkley has a good game. I don't think they could win without one of those guys coming through. And so, we can get to the specifics of my parlays and the way I've set this up, but my basic 3 bets here, and I have them, if you want to call them a betting triangle, there's all sorts of different ways to talk about it, but 50% of my bankroll is going to be on Philadelphia to win. It's technically a parlay bet where it's leading at the half and leading at the end of the game. And you do way better odds-wise on those than you do just betting them to win. If you don't want to screw around with the halftime element, I would take them -2.5. I would even consider another bet at -5.5. Don't take the odds. You don't have to take the line.
Yeah,
just because it's 1.5 or 2. I don't give a shit. My opinion is Philly's going to win. I don't want those 2 points. Those might be famous last words. We'll see.
Right.
But I don't want those 2 points. I actually want to plan on them winning a regular game. And so I'm getting +135 on Philadelphia -2.5. Those are solid odds. I think that dual bet I talked about was around +200. So half my money will be on Philadelphia to win. The other half will be in parlays. I have two main ones that I like. One is Jalen Hurts to get a touchdown, and one is Saquon Barkley to do well with yards and or attempts. So 15% of my money will be in those two parlays. So you've got 50 with the win bet and 15% with those two parlays. And I'll then just take the rest of the money and sew them all up together and hope, okay, if all three things happen, terrific. I would be a bit cautious about Barkley to get a touchdown and Hurts to get a touchdown. Not that I don't think they're both capable, but when you look at the odds of these, when you look at the odds available, the odds add up to something like 8 touchdowns a game.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. I mean, so you really need to have an opinion as to what's going to happen. But I wouldn't just say anyone that I like, they're going to just get a touchdown too. It's just, we all remember from Chicago in '85, I think that was the year. It just doesn't work that way. Walter Payton didn't get his, but William Perry did. So,
yeah.
So there you go.
No, and obviously everything you said is absolutely great information and should be taken well into account. Charlie, Matt mentioned the Jalen Hurts versus Saquon Barkley argument where I would agree with him completely. It's almost like treating, you have two favorites at 7-5 at, the 10th race at Gulfstream Park. If you're playing from a strict betting strategy standpoint, you should take one of them, whatever one you have the bigger opinion on, and try and make your day around that. You'd agree with that, right?
Oh, completely. When we get to our bets later, I will get to my opinions and you'll see. But to me, again, I won't get into what the whole bet is, but I'll start with if anybody paid very close attention to the Bills game, it should be very clear which one you should be betting to score the touchdown. I understand that, yes, the Eagles are going to run the tush push better than anyone. That being said, it's not like the Bills have the Bears offensive line, right? It's not like Josh Allen is a small, like Drew Brees quarterback. Like he is a big, strong quarterback who is mobile. They had their fullback behind. They tried the tush push over and over again, and they were not getting traction. But you know who played really well and dominated the Chiefs? James Cook was running all over him. When they got him in space, they couldn't stop him as good as that Chiefs defense has been. So for me, it's a no-brainer. You take Saquon to be the one to get the touchdown, and you don't touch Hurts. And yes, could they both get one like Matt said? Absolutely. But you kind of have to look at it. It's not just worrying about what the Eagles do or have done. You got to look at the opponent and see what they've succeeded in and what they've struggled in. And the reality is when they've played good running backs like James Cook, they've gotten explosive runs. When teams have tried to get cute with the tush push, they've gone nowhere.
Yeah, and we saw it multiple times. They're going to run it no matter what anyway. If they get down there, it's inevitable, which obviously is why Jalen Hurts is so favored. But again, yeah, you take a look, and I think that's the one thing you got to look at these defenses and see where they're strongest and where they're weakest.
But I'll just respond to that and say, Charlie, I'm with you, which is why I took Barkley to be the one, for lack of a better term, to have high production. So yards, attempts. I completely agree. I look at the touchdowns as being a little bit more random than what goes on all game, between the end zones. And so I do actually think it's going to be one of these stupid tush pushes where there's some, pass interference in the end zone. And, there you go. There's your 6 points or 8 points or whatever. So
yeah, the funniest thing I've seen all playoffs long was they were denoting the four quarterbacks of the championship. It was like Lamar Jackson, best running ability, Josh Allen, best arm, Mahomes, best accuracy, Hurts, most pushable tush is what I saw on that. So, but Pat, I mean, when you're talking about approaches, and I feel like this is the question we should take the longest on, just because, like you said, there's so many different ways. And it kind of leads into my next question, which is, props versus lines. Where do you like to go and where do you gravitate towards on such a day like this where, there is so many props available? When you're attacking, and it's nice now that we all basically live in a state where sports betting is legal now. So we have all these availabilities to us. Where do you start and where do you go?
Yeah, so I think you got to bounce it off of what Matt said about tailoring, what you kind of how you believe the game's going to play out. And that's what I think you have to do with these props. I mean, there's so many you can look at here. You start nitpicking different props, and you have 10 props, and 6 of them go against the other 4 in some way or another. So I think how I go about it is, I'll look at the game itself. If I like the over under, let's say I like the under. I'll go into the props knowing. Example, Saquon Barkley's over under for the first quarter for, let's say, his first rush is 4.5 yards. you would take the under if you think the first quarter is going to be the under, just off of the idea of, if he breaks one, that automatically boosts the odds of it going over. I think that's kind of how you have to go about it. I mean, that's how I will go about it, as we'll go into our best bets. But I think you need to kind of pick a side and just go that route.
And like Matt kind of treats it. I like what he talked about, because it's funny enough, man, I'm going to take it back to craps where, I have all these like little bets that I try to play the most of, but I also play, something like the hard ways, where in your case, it's parlaying all of these things that you like in a row. So if those hit, that's your jackpot winner in a way. It means that you're right about every single thing and you can be, like you said, you can make a lot of money for just, not a whole lot with these parlays. So Noah, last thing, I'm going to go to you again. If I know you're not as big a sports bettor as the rest of us, but when you come into a game or the Super Bowl where you're probably going to play, as honestly, this is nice because, a guy that versus a guy that bets all the time, like Matt and Charlie, versus someone like you that doesn't bet as much on sports. Where do you kind of gravitate when you come into a day like this?
Yeah, well, even if you're not such a big sports bettor like I am, like most of the people have seen the playoffs, so they know, how teams are doing going in. Like Charlie Cook had a really nice game against the Chiefs last week, or 2 weeks ago, sorry. Props versus lines, I would think when I'm looking at lines, I would almost treat it kind of close to horse racing, where I'm looking at double probables, I'm looking at pick 3 will pays just to see where money's going, like you had up on the screen. And then props is a little more so what I was alluding to, where you try to predict the dynamic of the game, how things are going to play out, and what obviously what players are going to perform. So I think you have to look at both kind of similar but different. Yeah,
I could not agree with you more. So you guys know me as I'm gonna jinx myself, the coin toss extraordinaire. I knew that was gonna get a reaction out of the man below me, but no, I'm always, especially with these big games, I'm much more gravitated to props. A lot of my sports betting goes through props. I don't generally like to touch on the game score. However, obviously with my props, it does kind of dictate how I think the game is going to play out. But I like the ability to, again, parlay something that necessarily, doesn't need to come down to a last second field goal or something like that, where, if I bet Saquon to get 125 yards and they're up, by 17 going into the fourth quarter, I know Saquon is going to run the ball. So if I think the Eagles are going to win by a decent amount, which you can take a bigger line, as Matt said, and get better odds on that. But I would be taking, something like Barkley yards or because they're always going to run the ball. And obviously Philadelphia doesn't throw the ball that much anyway. So I feel like if you're going to lean on a producer, if you think the Eagles are going to win, obviously the consensus here is Barkley. And the one thing that I want to touch on, guys, I kind of mentioned it when I brought up the money before, is this suspicious lines play. And I know, Matt, you do this a lot with horse racing, where you're very, very good at looking at probables and will pays and saying, well, those two things don't match up. So that's a little bit scary for me. So I'm going to take a back off. The thing for me is that the lines opened up at -1. The Chiefs are now -1.5, even though 80% of the money in the spread pool is being bet on the Eagles. So does that kind of ring those alarm bells in your head? Or is it kind of just a discrepancy where people are thinking it's the Chiefs and they're going to end up winning on a big day?
I think we're just kind of splitting hairs.
Yeah.
We're talking about money flows that I don't necessarily understand, as the casinos hedge with each other and all that. I don't know. For half a point here or there, those aren't the kind of lines that I look at as suspicious. It's more like Travis Kelce to get a touchdown, where there is a certain amount of hype that is priced directly into those odds.
Yeah.
The odds don't have to be fair. You don't necessarily get the chance to bet the other side if you think they've got it really off. They usually don't give you the chance to take advantage that way. They don't have to be fair. And so for all those dads watching the games with their kids, with their Swifty kids that want them to bet on Travis Kelce to get a touchdown, right? FanDuel's going to give you the finger and give you ridiculously horrible odds. That's just one to stay away from. And frankly, if you think Kelsey's going to have a big game, that would be a tough one to bet, because I'll bet you a lot of his lines are, you'd probably do okay with some of the activity stuff, maybe in terms of targets or yards, but that's someone whose odds are going to be pretty dramatically affected by public opinion.
Yeah. And obviously we talked, and the tush push does happen, but people are flowing. They're like, oh, they're going to get down to 1, and that's why Hertz is so low and everything. So I think that point is very well taken. Charlie, we talk about this a lot when we talk about sports, where you talk about where the sharps money is and stuff like that, where even though it is only half a point, as Matt said, but the line is shifting one way while the money's going in the other way. I know you probably have some research as well on it, so want to get your opinion on this question as well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what Matt's saying. I think what makes it really tough, especially like with Travis Kelce is a great example, is obviously it's very clear a big reason why people thought the Chiefs might struggle this year is the lack of weapons that they have compared to years past. There is no Tyreek Hill. Rashee Rice got hurt. And then again, you factor in, and again, as Matt was saying, is funny or crazy as it sounds, it is serious how many Swiftie fans are, not going to know a thing about football. And, a guy's going to be hanging out with his girlfriend or whatever and be like, hey, do you want me to bet something for the game shift or to watch it? Be like, oh, put Travis Kelce to score, put his over on this. So there's going to be stuff that's naturally overinflated. But again, you also have to factor in, like, the reality is Mahomes, regardless, does try to get Kelce the ball, and they do find ways to get him. So you have to consider that. And then in terms of things where I'm looking at sharp money, the thing I'm paying attention to, especially in the Super Bowl, is everybody wants to bet the over. I mean, that's just the thing that casual bettors do. They're going to see, there's Saquon Barkley, and they put up 55 last game, and they're supposed to, but it's the Chiefs. And even though they're actually been horrific on offense this season, people are going to see Mahomes and think, oh my God, Mahomes and Kelce, so they can score a ton. And I've been monitoring, and the over has been taken anywhere from 75 to 80% of bets, and it's moved down a full point to a point and a half. So that's something for me where we'll get into best bets later, but I will absolutely be playing something around the under because your casual bettors in the same way I would say to stay away from Kelce stuff because they're going to be playing him. A lot of casual bettors are going to be hammering the over.
Yeah, and you just thought I showed it right there. 72% of the money, 77% of the bet percentage is on the over. And I feel like that's actually a very, very good point. I'll be honest, over-unders is not something I touch very often, but that is a very, very good point to the fact of, and above all else, guys, they just want it to be a high-scoring game a lot of the time. So people are naturally going to be gravitated towards the over because it's the Super Bowl and yada, yada, yada. But it doesn't always happen like that. And with the Chiefs defense that's gotten dramatically better from years past, and the Eagles defense, which is no slouch themselves, I could, as much as, again, we don't want it as fans, could easily see it this being, like a 24-20 game, and that still hits the under.
Right. And the other factor I think you have to think about is the Eagles' play style. I don't think it's just the defenses, but don't forget, like, Philly is a run team. I understand that Jalen Hurts can't throw. I understand they have A.J. Brown. But at the end of the day, they're going to want to try to beat the Chiefs with smash-mouth football. And I think when you combine two great defenses with, yes, they have two, and with also the two solid offensive lines that invite running the football, I think everything is screaming that it would support the under. But again, the reason it's not showing that, although actually, again, it did move a point, is because a lot of people betting Super Bowl aren't using the same logic that you'll see in more casual games. They're just going to think big time names and think they want a lot of points. So why not bet the over?
Yeah. I was just going to say, I think a lot of people feel like if they're putting together a parlay, that there's some kind of rule that says you have to have the winner of the game and the over under and then something else.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to do that. I don't touch the over-under most of the time. Even if my opinion is under, you've seen it so many times how easy it is for something goofy to happen. You end up being completely right about the defense being great, but still losing on the under. It is a bet, in my opinion, that gets messed up with randomness more than some of these other things. So for that reason, I'm not in love with the over-under in general.
I mean, seen it multiple times these playoffs. Saquon Barkley busts out for a 70-yard run, and next thing you know, you're inching closer and closer to that over. So can definitely understand it from that point as well. Guys, it's been an absolutely fantastic show, and we still have fantastic viewership. So thank you guys all so much for watching, even though this is not, of course, what we cover every single week here on Bettin N Boozin. It's dramatically appreciated because we also do a whole bunch of sports betting, just not exactly – our biggest thing, of course, is what we do is we cover horses. But Rob, and I see you a lot in the chat. Really appreciate all the stuff that you've said. And he said the biggest thing I want to point out will actually touch after best bets, because the biggest thing about this, guys, as we get into best bets, is don't spend above your means. It's just like Kentucky Derby. It's just like Breeders' Cup. You should not be a bigger bankroll. Unless, of course, you saved up for it or something like that. But if you're just playing this as another week, there's no reason to play over your budget when you can do exactly the same thing you've done every single week. Maybe you can take off the next few weeks, even though, as we all know, as degenerate gamblers, we don't take off the next week. So, but Matt, I know this is a big thing, and this is a mantra you've said for a long time is, it's just another week of sports betting, even though it's the biggest game probably of American sports, throughout the entire year. It shouldn't be necessarily a week to just absolutely go crazy if you don't have the means to do it.
Yeah, look, I've got a buddy. I think you know the name Christian Helmers. He's got some videos out on YouTube right now. He's calling the Eagles his best bet in 10 years and is looking to make a life-changing score. Okay, my opinion here isn't that strong. I don't know that I even have criteria that would allow me to get to that sort of a conclusion. Yeah, this game actually does get, for me, a slightly higher budget than normal. Not crazy, but it's fun. It's you're going to be watching. You want some action, and I'll get to one action play in a little bit. But I do think whether a unit for you is $1 or $100, just carve up your 100 units, amongst your various bets in a way that makes sense and in a way that gives you a chance to make money. It shouldn't be that you have to hit every parlay to squeeze this out or whatnot. Give yourself multiple chances. We've talked about that before.
And if your units are $1, you shouldn't be, trying to hit, unless you're playing like a ridiculous parlay, shouldn't be like, I have to go in here and I have to make $1,000 on the Super Bowl.
No, we started with what's your goal, right?
Yep.
I'll just say it. I mean, for me, whatever, you don't need my unit. I'm probably looking to make 3x on this game. And I think I can, with the parlays that I've come up, I think I can do that. So who the heck cares how I define X versus the person sitting next to me? Let's just get at it the best we can. And good for you if you get your X and I get mine.
Yep, I couldn't agree with you more. Patrick, Noah, thank you guys so much for being patient. Greatly appreciate you guys staying on as we're going to get into our best bets for the Super Bowl and what we end up playing. Matt, of course, being the guest, we will start with you. You've kind of alluded to it already with the way you're strategizing this, but what are you playing for this year's Super Bowl?
All right, so 2 independent bets. Half my money will be Eagles by 2.5 just to win. So I just want, if the Eagles end up winning this game in a traditional, not by 1 or 2, generally speaking, I don't feel like I won when my team wins by that anyway. I don't feel like I was right. So I don't mind giving that away. So half my money on the Eagles to win, minus 2.5. I will also have a small bet at 7-1 on there being a defensive touchdown. And the reason I have that bet is it's live the entire game. Up to the very last second, you've got something to be rooting for. And so, okay, maybe that's 10% of my money. And I then talked about a Jalen Hurts TD, and I talked about Barkley producing yards and attempts. I wouldn't care if you flipped who got the TD. For me, that's where I'm going to end up going. And frankly, without getting too deep into it, you get some really good bonuses from these sports books. Some of them are on touchdown scorers. So maybe you take Barkley with the 50% boost on a touchdown bet, but when you do your parlay for other purposes, you put in Hurts or whatever. If you can get bonused up like that, it's not really hedging. You're kind of getting greened up either way. So Eagles to win, defensive touchdown, and then those 2 parlays. And again, at a very small unit, another parlay tying all that shit together so that if all 4 of these things happen, that's probably, that'll probably add up to 7 or 8-1 instead of 3-1. That's my guess.
Yeah. And like I said, you hit that jackpot and then you feel really good about yourself for the next coming weeks. Charlie, going to you next, my friend. Best bets wise, what are you playing for this year's Super Bowl?
Yeah, I'm just playing 2 parlays because I don't have a strong feel enough of who's going to actually win. So my parlay is going to be Saquon Barkley anytime touchdown scorer, Saquon Barkley most rushing yards, Patrick Mahomes most passing yards, then each team money line, and then I'm going to do an adjusted total with the under. That's going to be my parlay. And when I've been looking at the odds, I don't know what they closed at, but for each of them, I was looking somewhere in the range of about 6.5 to 7.5 to 1 on each of the parlays, which to me is enough value. And for someone like me who, as much as I like to bet sports, NFL is not my main sport this time of year. It's college basketball. So knowing that I'm going to be playing smaller units, it's a way for me to get in on the action without going too crazy and get good value.
Again, something exactly what we talked about. Patrick, where are you landing at this year's Super Bowl?
Yeah, I have two. One is the first half under. I think the way the Chiefs have played Super Bowls,
Actually, someone
recently,
mentioned that.
they've kind of gotten off to slower starts, and the way the Eagles, offensively is they're going to ground and pound. So if you could get a 5, 6, 7 minute drive out of them, especially early on, that takes a toll. So I think at 24.5 right now, the over under is. I really like the under in that spot. And then my other one will be a player prop. It's actually Patrick Mahomes to have over 4.5 as his rushing yard, as his first rush. So pretty much, I think the Eagles' defensive line is very, very good, and it's a strength of their team versus a Kansas City offensive line who is suspect. So I think that should make Mahomes get out of the pocket, and hopefully he can break one early on for over 4.5 yards on his first rush.
Drew Coatney has picked up on that particular one. He's played Mahomes' rushing attempts the last few weeks as well. And it's amazing how you'll even just get a kneel down or two at the end of a half, and those count. And so
that's true. Yes,
it's been quite comical watching how easy those are to rack up.
Yeah, Noah, I'm gonna go to you next, my friend. Again, as the smallest sports player probably on the entire screen, where are you kind of gravitating towards for this year's Super Bowl?
Yeah, taking from what I've seen so far in the playoffs and what my good friend Jackson Muniz has told me, obviously he's an Eagles fan. He tells me that the Eagles defense is obviously very talented, but they struggle with tight ends. So obviously you could look towards Kelsey, but what I'm thinking, obviously I back in my heyday, I played football, and you make it a point to cover guys that are talented. So what I'm thinking is the linebackers will maybe play a little bit deeper, especially third down territory. Get a little more check downs out of the backfield. So I don't know what the number is, but I would go Pacheco over receiving yards.
Hey, please go ahead, Matt.
How does someone Noah's age say back in the day?
Man, just turned 21, man. He's an old man now.
Yep.
Back in what
He's going to
day?
Vegas for the first time.
How much time are we talking about?
that's great.
Trust me, you're not wrong. It's the oldest one besides you on the screen. Trust me, I get it, and I get shit for it all the time. Like I said, man, he's 21. He's going to Vegas for the first time. It's hitting him real hard, man. He's getting old.
He's growing up real fast. We're gonna have a blast.
Yeah, no, we're absolutely gonna have a blast. Guys, again, you guys know I treat these sports bets as kind of more fun than really anything. Horse racing's where where I really have my best opinions. Sports betting is more just a really big luxury and just a fun time to have, especially just to have a little bit of action on a Sunday, as we already talked about. I really, really like Saquon's yards. I've kind of hinted at that, as Matt agrees with me as well. The Chiefs have been very suspect against the run, as I think Charlie mentioned. James Cook ran all over them. Really, really like Saquon's yards. And again, it's not something you can. And if you want to parlay it, you can take down a little bit on the yards because Saquon's yards are always insanely huge. You could have the ability to take alternate yards and stuff like that. So if you're parlaying it, would recommend to. What up, Charlie? Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to add, and another thing is, that's why I put it in my parlay, is if you don't want to stress about the specific yards or you don't want to take some crazy adjusted, you can bet him to just be the leading rusher in the game. I mean, you're going to get a little more value from that because there is, as Matt said, the unpredictable. But if you're not really setting the number and you think, again, another one of those props that people are going to bet, so naturally it's going to be a little inflated. Not many people really, I'll be honest, I discovered it this season that you could bet who will be the leading rusher in a game. So for a prop that's not as well known, you don't have to stress about a number. You just have to stress about him leading the most. Like I know for me, that was a bet I cashed it out well, was I bet James Cook to be the leading rusher in their game against the Bills.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, that's the first time I'm hearing about it, as you guys know.
Yeah, it was at plus 110, by the way, which is, to me, crazy value to get him as the leading rusher at plus odds.
At plus odds, yeah. Absolutely.
In that game he was. I don't know what Saquon is in this game. I'd have to check.
In the Bills game, I understand.
The Bills game. The Bills game,
James Cook in the Bills
plus 110 to be the leading rusher.
Yeah, I assume.
I'm looking at your comment on Pacheco, and it's interesting. I was going to place a bet on the touchdown scorer, and only 5 or 6 of them showed up on the screen, so I had to hit expand all or whatever. I couldn't believe how far down I had to go on the list to get to what. Look, I'm not a huge KC fan or football expert. I do bet games, but not with the level of analytics and whatever. I couldn't believe how far down the list I had to go to get to what I thought was one of KC's best running backs. And that to me was a terrible sign. So
yeah, I mean, it's him and Kareem Hunt, and like Rob
I will say he has
pointed
been
out,
hurt, to be fair.
he's been hurt a little bit, but they've kind of given Kareem Hunt a lot of those yards. But if he's healthy, there's no reason why he shouldn't get at least a decent amount of touches. Even if he's sharing with Kareem Hunt, there's no reason why he shouldn't get at least a decent amount of touches. So maybe a price to take a shot at, maybe, but might not be one to lean on.
Plus 395, which I got bonused, so I took it.
Yeah,
I just figured if the guy's healthy, that's that's almost like a health bet. But again,
yeah,
these are small units. Like again, out of 100 units I'm playing, that's going to be 3 or 4 of them. It's
and they did have the break from the Pro Bowl, so he got a little extra time to rest.
So, but again, it's the realm of, I mean, just like we talk about in horse racing, it's the realm of value versus opinion. If you think he has the chance, but you're not willing to take him at X amount, you're getting like Matt said, it's even boosted. You can get those boosted bonuses. You're getting a 5-6 to 1. That's probably what are worth a pretty healthy, it's worth taking a shot on a running back that could be healthy and people might overlook just because of these last couple weeks. I love Saquon's yards. I am gravitating more towards the Eagles, but again, I said I'm not the biggest line player, so I'll probably play it very like small units included in parlays and stuff like that. But it is going to be it's going to be purple Gatorade this year. I promise that, as much as I can promise. Probably, again, knock on wood, we hope. And Matt,
so how have you not said it yet? So I'll say it now.
Go ahead.
You haven't said it yet. There seems to be the most logical Kyle parlay of all time, which is a Jalen Hurts touchdown via tush push and betting on tails.
well, Matt,
You bet the coin flip every time, so bet on his tail.
Oh, I will. But however, it is a heads type of year, my friend. I believe it is a heads type of year. I will be betting on heads. It's been tails, heads, heads, tails, heads.
That's like reciting pi. How the hell do you?
Because I've cashed the last 5 times, Matt. So of course I'm gonna remember. I don't know. We have fun around here, and it's the one
Are you
thing.
really starting every parlay or every bet with the coin
No, I
toss?
bet it on itself. Yeah, I just bet it on its own. I just take like a crisp 50-50 right off the bat, and I'm either down right away or I'm having a fucking. I'm like last year. I was jumping up like on the bar, not on the bar, but at the bar and jumping up, and I was like, cool, I paid for my entire day. See you guys. But no, it's like I said, it's more fun than anything. So I like to start off my day with a little bit probably of a donkey bet, but again, we have fun doing it, and that's what it's all about.
At minus 104.
Minus 104. It's like basically straight 50-50, man. Come on. We have, you get, it's like Baccarat. You get, they take a little bit of commission and you call it even for what it is. But they said, just having fun around here. Saquon's yards will be my best bet of the entire weekend. They're going to run the rock. He's going to run for a lot of yards. And honestly, I like that Mahomes first rush, Charlie. I really do. I think that, or Patrick, excuse me. I think is who said that. I think that could be, especially if he's scrambling outside the pocket, I think that could be a very worthy bet, depending on what the odds are as of right now. So, but guys, thank you guys all so much for watching. It's been an absolutely great show covering Gulfstream and the Super Bowl. Matt, thank you so much for joining us, which I don't know. Have you been on just Bettin N Boozin before, or has it been kind of like picks and ponies and like said the live shows and stuff like that?
I've done a whole bunch of them. I don't think this one technically. So it's been an honor. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're welcome to have you anytime. You know that. So probably we'll hopefully obviously be able to share your horse racing contest expertise hopefully on this show soon as we get into NHC time and stuff like that. But to everyone out there, thank you guys all so much for watching. The chat's been absolutely fantastic. Again, Rob N, Katie, Terry Frank, and everyone in there. I've seen some new guys. Dan Duran, which I will end with this, as we kind of mentioned. The Super Bowl is the same as the Kentucky Derby as far as most bettors think. They need to play their whole bankroll that day. Always remember what Matt teaches and realize we have 365 days to make money, and there's always more things to bet on. We will leave it with that. For special guest and good friend of the podcast, Matt Miller, for my co-hosts, Charlie Freeman, Patrick Hunsel, and Noah Maher. This has been your host, Kyle Roscoe, in episode 118 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast, covering the Super Bowl and Gulfstream Park this weekend. And no matter what you play or how you play, crush those bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good night.